Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first show of 2022. We hope that you had a fantastic New Year beginning. Also, your New Year resolutions have started to take some effect. If not, don't worry, you can start anytime. There is a lot of information around, there are a lot of things to be amazed of. The pandemic is being tamed, as it is called in the media, and a lot of other things are going on. Probably the world is turning the corner, and we as human species are showing the resilience we are famous for. And also, don't forget the purposive movement of consciousness. Today's topic, in the beginning of this first year, which is very important. We are putting this topic as one of the most important, and we have spoken about these things in general before, but this is probably the largest thing that we need to be aware of. And the subject is, are we being dumbed down by the information culture and materialism? That is the basic subject we'll be talking about today. And again, just like every other episode, we have with us Dr. Valentina Onisor, MD, and Professor Amit Goswami, Ph.D. A very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, Krishna.
So today's subject, as I said before, is are we being dumbed down by the materialistic culture and information processing? Now here, I would like to ask you a question, Professor Goswami, that if we look at our lives today are right now intricately woven with the materialist culture or the information processing. Most of our lives. I am talking about the general mass here. And even this conversation that we are doing, and the viewers will be watching all over the world, is because of information technology. So we cannot say that all of this information technology or information processing or so-called materialism, the question I should put it like this, that is all of this bad, or is there some good in it, and how do we separate the wheat from the chaff?
Yes, of course. What prompted me to think of this topic is the recent, actually not so recent, several weeks have passed since, or maybe months, the mass resignation of a vast number of people from their cushy jobs in the United States. This made big headline, and of course, there is indeed many availability of jobs in America today because of this mass exodus. But when asked, many of these people said that they're looking for meaning and purpose of their life, and their present job is just not satisfying it. And therefore, they're going to go on their own. This is as we expect from the movement of consciousness, because the consciousness for the past year or even more longer, even of the mainstream media, is that yes, there is a definite dumbing down as a side effect. As Krishna said, not all of the information culture is bad. We are using it every day, and that's not the issue. The issue is about this particular side effect. If one get attached to it, if one uses information and sacrifices the deeper thinking about the content, which gets us to meaning, in other words, understanding the implication of the information. You see the difference? Very, very important. I'll state it again. The key difference is understand. A computer cannot understand. It can analyze information into symbols and work on symbol processing much faster than any human being can. This is the use of computers. But computers cannot describe the human being. Why? Because human beings have this additional ability of going beyond the information and get something called meaning out of it. Now, this word meaning is an inherent object in our consciousness. We cannot define it. We cannot define it in terms of other concepts. It's a fundamental concept. We can only analogize, like a sentence has syntax and semantics. Similarly, we have content, information, and meaning of words, of thoughts in general. When the meaning becomes conditioned, and we always use a one-to-one correspondence, then the meaning can be represented in terms of symbols and produces the misconception that there is no meaning, there is only information. But as you know, as metaphors and mythology and understanding concept itself suggests that there is more to every piece of thought than just the information content. Any thought you mention, I'll find a metaphor in it. It can be used metaphorically. This is the nature of thought, this is the nature of language. It cannot be done completely one-to-one, and this is why all the ambiguity that we see in our law courts, all that shows up, cannot be avoided. However much lawyers have tried and tried and tried. The French language is supposed to have the most one-to-one correspondence between language and meaning, but still it cannot be perfected because of this aspect, that there is a personal aspect. When I understand information, I can always understand in a specific way and use it to serve my specific way. This is why all the sophistry, this is why all the confusion, etc. Mathematics avoids this. Mathematics is completely expressible in terms of equations. Very little ambiguity there. Even there is some cases of ambiguity, but very little scope of ambiguity. But language is not mathematics. And thought that is usual, that is language thought. Mathematical thought is only for the few who can do it. So, meaning and purpose, where do they come from? Where do original meanings come from? And purpose is another anathema to materialists. They cannot even include it in any kind of physics that they can do because materialists only permit Newtonian physics, and that's the physics of objects. And objects, specifically material objects, cannot handle meaning objects, cannot handle the origin of meaning objects, cannot handle purpose. Newton's laws are causal laws. There is a force, there is an effect. Purpose is something of a plan in the future that is producing an effect. Aristotle included it in his philosophy. He called it final cause. But Newtonian science did not have any scope. Even Darwin's theory, Darwin was keenly aware that purpose is important to human lives. Purpose is definitely playing a role, as Lamarck was saying, another biologist, even earlier than Darwin. Purpose plays a role in evolution, but Darwin could not include it. And ever since, it became a prejudice on the behalf of scientists, materialists, that there is no purpose in the world. Although the evidence is otherwise. The evidence is that even the universe is subject to a purposive movement called anthropic principle. It evolves so that eventually life can evolve, something in the future in mind. That's how universe evolves for the first few billion years until it takes life to evolve. Quantum physics says there is no collapse of the possibility waves until that first life evolved in the first habitable planet. So all this, what is that brings in purpose in our life? Movement of consciousness in the forms of things that we call, Plato first named them, Although the concept was there from 7,000 years ago in the work of Hindu Indian spiritual seekers, wisdom theorists, Upanishads were written at that time, and that already has that idea. Purpose comes through us from aspects of consciousness, deeper aspects of consciousness, wise aspects of consciousness. These aspects, most familiarly, are truth, love, justice, goodness, wholeness, this kind of thing. Now, do you get? That's where our meanings come from. Yes, we give meaning to everyday affairs, we give meaning to physical objects, we give meanings to our feelings, we give meaning to our thought. Abstract thinking is about that. But the fundamental meanings come from creative exploration of the archetypes. This is what we have lost in our culture under the barrage of materialist science. Number one culprit and the number two culprit is where you are closed off completely from meaning is the information culture it has created. If we stay within it, you are doomed completely. The previous generation that I'm talking about, the exodus that occurred in America, occurred because these people did not grow up in the information culture. They know about meaning and purpose because at that time there were values in the American society. Now there isn't. It's all pretend. Both sides, the materialists, the Democrats, and the Republicans, the religionists and feudalists. Both sides just pretend the values. Religions have been pretending values for a long time. Scientists started pretending values with the prevalence of this materialist dogma. Everything is matter. There is no scope for values in everything is matter philosophy. The molecule cannot see values. Please understand that deeply. If biology is molecular biology, biology is the play of chemistry and physics, then there's no way that you can talk about meaning processing and purpose and archetypes, values in talking about human beings. This is the situation we're living in. Great institutions of learning that we are proud of once, Harvard, Princeton, these places. Einstein worked in Princeton. Great thinkers worked in Harvard. It's all gone now. Everybody is materialist from those places. Cannot think meaning and purpose. Explicitly excludes them or have to play surreptitious games, calling them by different names so that they can be politically correct and not get into controversy. This is the situation. In this situation, people are still brave enough to quit because they have hope. We are there, and a few other organizations like us, they have given this hope that there is an alternative paradigm. There is quantum physics. There is a spiritual revival. And that is here with us. They are giving concrete results. And it is possible to be an entrepreneur in this world and find meaning and purpose. And these people, I tell you, they will. They will. Yes, a few of them are establishing small business going back to the old ways, but many of them will stick to the new ways, find meaning and values, and show the world that it is possible. We don't have to stay within this complete gutter of materialism and information culture. Krishanu?
Fantastic. That was a very, very powerful explanation, I must say. And indeed, so this is what we needed to convey to our audience, that this is something we must watch out. If following your archetypes is not in your new year planning, please include it. This is going to help not only you, but the environment around you. But to know more about it and how to be really, really attentive, we will move to Dr. Onisor. Valentina?
Hi, everyone. So indeed, if we lose that freedom to pursue purpose and archetypes, we are in danger of losing civilization itself. And if you take a look of what's happening today, mirror all this situation, because we live in a situation where all this become more and more superficial, and it is time to make the case for this return of the archetypes in our midst, in our persona, in our professional lives, and even social systems, of course. Because in the past, when people have lived in societies with shared capital, where education was open to exploration of truth, and people were empowered via education to exercise their freedom and to choose the way to make a living, the civilization thrived, right? But when the opposite was the case, when just a few elites would take over capital, power, control of education and medical system and so on, civilization declines. So take a look. And of course, nowadays we live more and more almost exclusively through thinking. Yeah, so we just think and we plan, but actually it's never free thinking, because it's all time related to the past or projecting the future. And again, it is because of all this information processing, we are getting more dumbed down, right? And you there are some sayings like something like mind can change nectar in poison and the other way around, right? And so on. And then maybe you want to ask yourselves why nature gave us all this capacity, all this fabulous potential, and we are using out of it just 3, 4, 5% consciously of the brain capacity. So what happens with the rest of 95%? Maybe we want to ask this question. And how come that we get to underuse it so much, right? If we don't use 5% of the muscles of, just 5% of the muscle of an arm, what would happen, right? Or the digestive system and all that. And about the brain, we don't really ask ourselves so much, So we indeed have all this potentiality, but of course, like also we speak about oneness, but we need to also access the unity consciousness and this I to access the infinite new potentiality. And again, how to do that? Of course, as Professor Goswami mentioned, through using the mind to process new meaning out of other people's meanings or your own old meanings. But what to do today when all that we are getting is just, again, from you find everything online, right? And again, if you're not afraid so much of the unknown, if you're not afraid of discipline, then creativity will come easy. And of course, the reward is, of course, to awaken this higher intelligence, which is there waiting. And the reward is called, of course, then happiness and health as well. So, as you said, attention. It's a tremendous need for us to ask what's happening with our attention. And of course, afterwards, we speak about choice. Without attention, you cannot make a choice, obviously, right? And you cannot even make an intention, because many people know about quantum science, just what is called science of manifestation, or what is promoted in the movies, such as The Secret. And again, you don't really get the secret. But there is indeed a quantum neuroscience of attention that has got a lot of research. Okay, so attention plays role in all the discoveries, in all the insights, and the clarity is built in the person. Yeah, normal people without any kind of preparation will not even know what to expect. But from being ready, one which we call a genius, would see into the unknown. But when we don't have attention, consciousness will choose just from the statistical average based on a particular choice in my spectrum of choices that I have maybe established for that respective stimuli, right? So attention is crucial. Otherwise, it's just a conditioned person. And people who want to transform will have to learn to pay attention, because they will have their intention to play a role in their life, right? And attention and intention, they go very well together. And if we cannot pay attention, we will not transform, and we will not be able to bring any objective into practice, into manifestation. Yeah. So even if we do any kind of rituals or yoga practice or meditation, but conditioning is not enough to go with the past conditionings, no such condition. We also have to pay attention. And medically speaking, I have to tell you that anxiety, depression, ADHD, and more, it's a sure sign of a person who lost the capacity of attention. Yeah, and they also cannot exert their willpower, and willpower comes with freedom to choose from a certain conditioning and self-respect, and the only way to stop consciousness collapse in a certain way. So again, a very open mind to see when consciousness delivers the answer has to be there, right? If you're not there, who sees that? And creativity, it has to start from somewhere. And then again, check what's grabbing your attention. Yeah? Because of course, things that are of interest to us in terms of meaning or feeling and meaning, that's emotion, right? But again, today's materialist culture emphasizes information processing, not meaning. And information on internet, you just send the kids there, right? And just tell them you have to learn how to retrieve it. But it's such a big problem, this one. You have to really you shouldn't give your kids a phone or a computer before they learn, they are trained about attention and choice and all these things. And this is unfortunately is not happening still. So again, as Amit said, what you get from internet is other people's meaning, not yours. And then another problem is that information is very hard to remember than when you derive the meaning of it yourself, right? So what's happening is that a kid, for example, can learn a subject enough to be great in an exam, yeah, but they will rapidly forget that information. So learning is greatly impaired in this way. And since rational thinking depends on this accumulated ability to retrieve memory, eventually rational thinking itself will be compromised. So do we want to live in this kind of society? Just ask yourself, because it's becoming dangerous. You hear about all these robots nowadays, which no wonder that the possibility that they will take over our jobs and all that is there. And ask yourself why, But again, it's common for so many children to develop in this way the attention deficit hyperactive disorders, ADHD, right? And this has to also do with this emphasis on meaning that is prevalent in our culture. So it's lack of attention is serious business. It's no joke here. And when we attend, again, we are putting our choice in line, and movement of consciousness will go along with this, with our choice. And when we are not attentive, we are just passively aware, behaviors are collapsed according to our habit pattern on a statistical basis, not necessarily in tune with the current moment and necessity. And that's how entropy is created in the processing of the mind. And one of the symptoms is ADHD. So, of course, there are methods. There are plenty of methods, even just simply deciding, understanding that you need to be attentive, that otherwise you're just wasting all your life there. And that there's something more to life than just waking up and watching some movies, eating some corn and going back to bed, or just, again, watching some anything, but it's not you there. And then you become more and more separated and in a state of sufferance, and just asking yourself, okay, what happens with me? Why God gave this to me? Why? Because again, this necessity of training ourselves, it's ours. So we have to become responsible and want to transform. And this will, of course, reflect into the others.
Thank you, Valentina. It was really wonderful. Now, over to Professor Goswami for summing up the session and any last words.
Thank you, Krishna. So, let me pick up one aspect of what Valentina said, so important, attention, and explain what quantum physics unequivocally says about what happens when you don't pay attention. What happens when you don't pay attention is that the choice goes up to the movement of consciousness. And the movement of consciousness, the science of consciousness says, chooses according to the probabilistic ways that you have been conditioned. You have been conditioned by the culture in several responses to information. And the most probable of this response is what is chosen. In other words, if somebody is in tune with the culture and your belief system, can easily manipulate you if you are not attentive guy expressing an opinion with which your natural tendency is to agree without thinking. But today, there's so many manipulators among politicians and especially the media, which are always giving their opinions in the guise of information. Very dangerous this profession has become. They're even more of the problem creator, mischief creator than the politicians are. And these people deliberately are creating isolated tents in which most people are living, causing a huge polarization of thought among people. People are divided today like never before. Why should people be divided when they are ultimately all connected in a oneness of consciousness? Explain that. Why? Why? Because our brain works this way, as Valentina explained. We have to accept what the brain has given us. It is the results of million years of development, evolution, cannot be changed right away. Eventually, yes, we can change it. Individual basis, we are already changing it. Yes, physiology is not infallible. It can be changed. It can be created fresh, anew, improved, optimized. But not all people are capable of doing it because you don't have this in the universal software. We are working on it. Maybe in another few decades, maybe 100 years, but not now. Now you have to take responsibility for your attention. If you don't, all these calamities that you hear, they're all results of your inattention, my inattention. Nobody is exempt. Our mass level hypnosis, amnesia, this is what has given us global climate change, such a disaster waiting for us. Ultimately, it will produce huge calamity. And it's already past the date. I'm not kidding you. I'm very optimistic about the future, but only realistically optimistic. We have done enormous damage already. To keep from doing more damage is urgent. To listen to this kind of message that we are trying to propagate today is urgent. The appeal to you is urgent. Attention. Pay attention, please. The life of the planet depends on your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. It was really, if someone listens to this conversation carefully, then there is a lot to take away. And whether this is true or false, whether these conversations make sense or not, it's very easy to judge, very easy to find out. Anyone can do it. And we sincerely hope that this appeal that Professor Goswami has made will really, really reach to the audience that we are trying to show this to, and they will try to find the meaning of it. And this meaning realization, the understanding, can make a huge paradigm shift in us. And that is what is needed on a granular basis so that the larger society can be impacted, our behavior can be impacted, and eventually our planet can be saved and our civilization thrive again. With this note, and wishing you very, very happy 2022, we conclude this session and see you next week.